and keep hold of that idea of separation because we think it's going to give us ease and safety and happiness. And it's not. We need to learn to recognize it and not believe a word it says. It's not a trusted counselor. It's leading us up the garden path. So the mind training is about taking responsibility for our own mental states rather than depending on the outside world for ease and happiness. And the law of karma tells us, we know from the first lines of the Dhammapada, that experiences are preceded by mind, produced by mind, and led by mind. When we speak and act with a skillful mind, happiness follows. And when we speak or act with an unskillful mind, unhappiness follows. So it makes sense to speak and act with a skillful mind, but it's so hard to do when we're blaming, isn't it? It's so hard to do when we're blaming and thinking that it's their fault. So we need to get out of unskillful mental states as fast as possible. And the slogan, it needs to be something that you know is true. You need to believe it, that it's true. That actually, I am responsible for my mental states, not anyone or anything out there. So, what am I clinging to in? Oh no, hang on a minute. Sorry, I'll go back to the second bit of the law of karma. So, it's not what happens to us that makes us happy or unhappy, but of our experience of it. What happens to us? Two different people could be standing side by side and the same thing could happen. They would have completely different experiences of it. It's not the outside things happening to us that give us our experience, but what our mind does with that. So my biggest experience of this recently, over the past few weeks, has been road rage. Oh, get me in my car, and it's like a personality transplant, like Jekyll and Hyde. So there's this particular thing that I won't say what it is because you might do it. I don't want to pinpoint anyone, but it's something that somebody would particularly do in a car. And I'd be driving along and I'd overtake them and I'd glare. I'd kind of give the look, the look as I drive past and give the look and then drive on. And I've been trying really, really hard lately to stop doing that. And I think I've cracked it, but I'm going to tell you about that in a minute. So why do we blame others? Why do we do that? If we know the truth of the fact that it's only me working with my own mind that can cause me unhappiness or happiness, why do we continue to blame others? Well, I think partly in those moments immediately afterwards, it feels really good. That glare made me think, yeah, I showed them as I drive off. There's probably kind of a chemical in the brain or something that I get. There's something probably feels quite good to blame and take the heat off me or something. I don't know, maybe it's that. My granddaughter, I teach her to blame. She's 2, and if she falls over or if she bangs her head, it's like naughty cupboard, naughty floor, when she's fallen over and hurt herself. It's like I teach her to blame. It's really weird. It's also kind of, in our culture, it's culturally validated, that we live in a culture that blames, unfortunately. And in a way, that's good. We want employers to take responsibility. In a way, we want people to be held accountable. But actually, that blaming, are we getting a bit kind of going a bit over the top with that? I'm not sure, but I think I do see that immediately something happens, something bad happens, people are immediately wanting to find whose responsibility it is. And of course, it does have a good aspect, but it's an immediate response, which perhaps we could look at. I think it feels safe to band together, to blame. I think that's part of it, that when we're banding together and blaming the other, it feels safer. And of course, that leads to, eventually it leads to war, doesn't it? Perhaps it's less painful than feeling the hurt and the fear underneath to blame the other. It's also a little bit self-congratulatory, you know. It puts me in opposition to those terrible people over there. I would never do that. It kind of makes me feel better about myself or something. So, you know, perhaps, and blaming ourselves, we need to look at that as well. You know, our condition, if in our conditioning it's not been safe to challenge where the actual harm is coming from. I mean, children do this, don't they? They blame themselves. Self-blame is still, the slogan still holds true. So it's also culturally acceptable in a way. You know, on soaps, on EastEnders, if something bad has happened, then the caring person in the soap would say, oh, it's all my fault, I blame myself. And that kind of signals that this person cares about the other person. You know, if that person said, well, actually, I think that it came out of a really complicated set of conditions or why they did that. You know, I'm not quite, and actually, I don't blame myself for what happened to them. It's like, you know, they wouldn't, the care, you know, like, do you know what I mean? We see it all the time. It's somehow selfish to not blame yourself, isn't it? You know, and I think we've really got to look at that. You know, being blamed, on the receiving end of that, it's really awful, isn't it? To be blamed is awful, but still the slogan holds true. Drive all blames into one. So not to put the emphasis on me being blamed for something, but looking at what I'm holding on to. What am I holding on tight to? And can I loosen around that? So not to worry too much about what I'm being blamed for, but looking at what's actually going on underneath. We might have contributed towards the harm, or we might have contributed towards the situation, but responding with an open heart to that, not out of fear of blame, is a much healthier way to approach it, and nearer to the truth. And all of these have ourselves at the center. Blaming ourselves all has us at the center. And we can look at these as well. So responding from a place of being the center of the universe, when actually maybe other factors could have been at play. It's not all down to us. It can never be all down to us. It can never be all our fault. That's not the nature of how things are. The language of blame is really important as well. You know, if we're blaming someone else, then we say, he made me do it, or she made me feel like that. Rather, she or he makes me feel like this. It might seem like that. It really might feel like that, but it can't be true. Nobody can make us feel anything. So looking closer at what's arising in relationship to that person would be nearer to the truth rather than saying, they make me feel like this. You know, things like the weather makes me depressed. Does it? Just looking a bit closer at that and seeing if it's true. The language of blame, again, you know, when you stub your toe, is it the cupboard or the chair that's the stupid thing, or is it you that's the stupid? Who do you blame? You know, how do you speak to yourself when you bang your head on a cupboard and it really hurts? Are you stupid, or is the cupboard stupid, or are you a lucky one that doesn't go down that road and just feels the pain of it? Looking at the harsh way we speak to ourselves is really helpful. And in the Metta Bhavana, in the stage 4, you know, sometimes we can use a kind of a shortcut phrase of the difficult person. You know, are they really, or is it that what's arising in you is difficult in relationship to that person? You think it's difficult to be around that person, but it's not them that's being difficult, really. You know, just have a look at that. The body language of blame as well. When I'm, you know, it's like making myself turn to the person who I'm blaming for something and really take them in, look at them, you know, take them in, relax, be open body language, instead of kind of, you know, I'd want to do this, I'd want to turn away. But trying to relax and turning towards and opening my heart and looking and holding them in my being rather than turning away. And the road rage thing, this kind of looking. I talked to Paranita about this, the first time I didn't do the glare was like my head just so much wanted to do it. And I was holding onto the steering wheel like this, saying, drive all blames into one, drive all blames into one. As I was driving past, don't look, don't look, don't look. And I got past the car and I hadn't looked, I hadn't given them the glare of evil because they'd done this thing that, was getting in the way of my happiness. They'd done this terrible thing and I didn't look. And it was one of the most difficult things I've ever done. It was my head was in so much of a habit of giving the glare. And when I didn't look and I got past the length of the car and I hadn't looked, I could just feel that a habit had broken. And the next time, it happens all the time, every time I'm out in the car, it's like, so I've done it, say 5 or 6 times since I've passed and not looked. And now it's like normal, I don't even think of looking. And there's been something in my being has dropped about blaming other people when I'm in the car for doing terrible things, that I wouldn't do that. They're breaking the rules. They're breaking the law by doing that thing. I wouldn't do that. But somehow by forcing my head to stay in that direction and not turning, it's like my body did the thing that I wanted it to do, and my mind then caught up. So even language, as far as body language is concerned, is also something we could look at. So what do we do? What do we do with this drive all blames into one? How does it kind of in practice? So we need to really believe that other people aren't to blame for our mental states. We really need to believe that. And it's really important that we don't think that if we're in an abusive situation or in a harmful situation, we get out and we report them to the police. Nobody is suggesting that we take on nobody suggests that we take on harm to ourselves. That is just completely not what this slogan is about. We're looking at the everyday, normal things that arise in our lives. But if we're we need to have friends that we would talk to, that might help us out with deciding about what's kind of situation that we're in. But nobody is suggesting that we stay in coercive or abusive or in any way harmful relationships or situations. We must get out and do something about that. I hope that I've made that really clear. This is not what drive all blames into one means. So, I'm thinking about being in the car. What do? We feel it rising. And we hear it in our language. We might say it out loud, or it might just be in here. We wish that they would just disappear. We might have this habit of blaming. We can probably hear it arising. We can probably hear the language that we use. We can feel the tightness in our chest. We might feel tight. And in that moment, what are we clinging to? What is it that we're actually blaming them for? What is it that they're doing? What are we holding on to? Is it possessions that we're holding on to? Is it ideas about ourselves? Is it ideas of right and wrong? They're doing something wrong in that car, and I'm holding on to the doing the right thing in my car. And I'm doing the right thing, and they're doing the wrong thing, and I'm holding on, and I'm going to tell them so. It's that, I was holding that, and that's the clinging, the ego clinging that we're talking about. So ideas about ourselves, we're tight around them. In those moments, can we clock that and just think, oh, it's clinging that's making me, that it's making me feel like this. Can I let go? Can I, political views, political opinions, in the car, perhaps it's physical safety. Maybe the slogan comes in, drive all blames into one, and can we loosen our grip just a little bit? Can we soften around what it is that we're trying to hold on to, and just notice if anything changes. Just notice if anything changes. We can put these people into the 4th stage of our metta-bhavana, hold it in a bigger wisdom perspective of love, metta. Hold it in a bigger perspective of metta. So that Always we've got as much love in our experience as we can possibly muster up. Making sure always to be kind with whatever arises. And if we can't do it, we can't do it. And that's that. And we just carry on blaming and we glare. I glared for years until I was able to stop glaring. And then maybe that'll just be translating into something else that I do. So we just be kind with it. And we just notice that we're trying. We're just trying to do our best to soften around ideas about clinging to whatever it is that we're tight around, and just trying to let go just a little bit every time, just trying a bit. And the slogan "Drive all blames into one" is alongside another slogan. It comes in a pair, and it's "Be grateful to everyone." And I would put in there, "Be grateful to everything," and also, I don't know whether you think of like the natural world that we're part of as being a thing. I'm not sure, but everyone, everything, natural world. Be grateful. So gratitude. We have gratitude is very much it's very much part of our culture now, isn't it? Lots of people keep a gratitude journal. It's not unusual. I'm sure you're not surprised that gratitude is a very strong Buddhist practice. And the Buddha was a grateful Buddha, Sanghagita says. The newly enlightened Buddha was a grateful Buddha, an idea which is perhaps unfamiliar to us. We think of the all-wise Buddha, the compassionate Buddha, the resourceful Buddha, but we don't usually think of the grateful Buddha. But one of the very first things the Buddha did after his attainment of enlightenment was to show his gratitude to those who had helped him. He was even grateful to the tree. This incident alone gives us food for thought. The Buddhist scriptures contain a number of references that show that the Buddha and his disciples didn't regard trees and stones and rocks as inanimate dead matter. They regarded them as living things. They would even have a relationship with them. I don't want to go on to read all of it, but it's surely better to have this attitude to gratitude to the living world. The Buddha certainly did think in that way, and it's therefore possible for him to be grateful even to a tree. So I just wanted to bring that in, that gratitude isn't just to other people. It's a way of approaching everything that we might come into contact with at any time in our life. And the reason that it's so important with the mind training is that every triggered arising of these terrible afflictions of anger and ill will and hatred is an opportunity to practice Kshanti. And Kshanti is a very beautiful approach to life, where it's patience, it's forbearance, it's metta, it's love, it's openness, it's spaciousness. And every time these things like anger and ill will and hatred are triggered, then that is an opportunity to practice patience. If others didn't trigger my anger, I wouldn't know it was there. So I can say thank you, bearing in mind what I said to you about making sure that I'm not kind of in any kind of danger. So we can be grateful to the cupboard that we stub our toe on. Thank you. We can be grateful to, the Buddha was grateful to the tree that he sheltered under. You don't drop the sugar all over the floor. Thank you. You find your earplugs in the middle of the night. Oh, thank you. So there is, and this practice of Kshanti is very important to our growth. So gratitude comes along with the practice of Kshanti. They're very, very connected, because ill will, for example, is being triggered, and I'm practicing patience with that, then that is a reason for me to be grateful, because I'm having the opportunity to practice Kshanti, which is so important. So no difficulties in my life, no Kshanti, no enlightenment. And if we want to wake up, we need to practice Kshanti. So if we want to wake up, we need these difficulties, we need people to blame. So this is a total turnaround, isn't it? It's a complete turnaround, is a total turnaround, isn't it? It's a complete turnaround from what we're used to, how we're used to being. So Pema Chodron says, be grateful to everyone is getting at a complete change of attitude. This slogan is not wishy-washy and naive. It does not mean that if you're mugged on the street, you should smile knowingly and say, oh, I should be grateful for this. Be grateful to everyone means that all situations teach you, and it's often the tough ones that teach you best. So we don't need to look for difficult situations. We don't need to search for difficult situations to be grateful for. We don't need to look for people to blame. We just have to be in the sangha. That's all we need. Gratitude can be a part of our practice in the sangha, because we are going to have opportunities to practice Kshanti. We need to have people to blame. We need to have difficult situations for us to practice Kshanti, and we have that all here. Gratitude, we can have gratitude for that. It's all here on a plate. All we need is to be on a team at the center. We need to be in a group at Sangha night. We need to spend time with others, do the metta bhavana, take on a responsibility, and our mind will bring us everything we need. So there's the thing that I think is true and that we can consider is that the gratitude will come because these the difficulties and the people that we might be looking for to blame are actually our greatest spiritual teachers in a way. And Atisha, who was one of the people who put together the mind trainings, I think he might have been the one actually, Atisha, and a medieval Buddhist master. He was going on a trip, a long journey, a 2-year journey to Tibet. And he was concerned that he wouldn't come across any situations where he would be having a difficult time, where he wouldn't have anyone to blame. And he was very concerned about that because he wanted to practice Kshanti, patience. He wanted to practice forbearance. So he took with him the most difficult person in the monastery, the tea boy. He took him with him on the trip so that he would have an opportunity to practice Kshanti. And his gratitude to the boy was huge because he was every day giving him opportunities to practice. Because these difficulties, these difficult people root out for us these painful afflictions. And of course, we will be grateful for that. So this practice of gratitude in Buddhism isn't about the kind intentions that other people might have. It's just that we have received benefit. That's what gratitude means. It's more of a cognitive thing than a feeling. So we don't have to feel warm and fuzzy in this practice of gratitude. We don't have to feel that. It's more a clocking, more of a kind of an awareness of the benefits that we have received. It's not about depending on somebody else's kind intention. So we notice that the benefit we have received by being in this difficult situation, and often we know that to be true, don't we? We look back at difficult situations in our lives and difficult people, and we think, oh, I really grew then. I really learned something from that. And that's the basis of the slogan, be grateful to everyone, because these are the situations where we can grow the most. So being grateful to everyone, giving us the opportunity to practice Kshanti when it's a difficult situation, to practice patience, forbearance, kindness, metta, love. Being grateful to everyone aligns our mind to the true nature of reality, actually. That the true nature of the way things are is that we couldn't possibly exist. We wouldn't exist without the existence of other beings and things. It's very mysterious, but we arise in dependence upon others. And the whole, it's more than that, more profound than that. I don't understand it, so it's hard to explain, but we arise in dependence upon all that has ever arisen. And if we move through life with a sense of gratitude to everything and everyone, including the natural world that we are part of, then our connection to life will always be with us. This truth of connection, this truth of interconnection, if we're really there, then gratitude is a natural arising of that we don't necessarily have to feel it, like that warmth in our body, but we just clocking it is enough. That might lead to warmth, but it might not. You know what I mean? The kind of that strong feeling of gratitude that we can get. So gratitude is the appropriate response to seeing the nature of interconnectedness, actually. It's the most real seeing of how the world actually is alive and supporting us, and that we support others as well. So drive all blames into one and be grateful to everyone / everything. It might already be a really strong practice for you. I know that gratitude is a strong practice for lots of people. But maybe have a go and see where it takes you this week. Maybe choose one situation where you can see how you're being triggered by a situation or a person and you're blaming. It's they're getting in the way of my happiness. See if there's any softening you can do, really examining what's going on in those moments of blaming. What is it you're holding tight to? And could there be any softening? Could there be any loosening of that relationship with whatever it is you're holding on to? It's a good time to practice political affiliation, isn't it? Or it might be that you would like to practice that being grateful to everyone and everything. If you already have a practice of that, maybe upping it a little bit, including in your gratitude list or your gratitude journal that you already keep, maybe one situation where it might not be so obvious, something that might be a little bit more difficult. So